How's everybody feeling? Everybody overwhelmed with the fact you got tech due at the moment and then also this stuff as well? Yes, lots of nodding. Alright, I won't take up too much of your time, but I just wanted to have a bit of a chat extending on our conversation from last week. We talked about schematic design, but I guess before schematic design we need to have a conversation about actually getting the client in the first place. There's no schematic design without a client. And that will, I guess, feed into where you guys are at right now in terms of putting together a presentation. So if you treat your tutors and your lecturers as potential clients, and the fact that you're trying to win us over, and that you're competing with everyone else in the room to win us over for that golden HD, then obviously developing a panel and understanding how that all goes together will be helpful for you. So I guess we'll have a bit of a conversation about that, how it works right once you graduate as an architect and trying to establish yourself, and then you can sort of use that as a metaphor for how you'll be working now for the rest of the semester, if everyone's happy with that. Cool. So I think it's important to get it into your head early on as an architecture student, and I'll remind you that I like to talk about things that people never told me at architecture school because I feel like they were missed out. So I'm going to bring up a few points that I think were very important but overlooked. So there are a lot of, there's only so many opera houses, museums, stadiums and galleries in the world, but seemingly there's infinite architects. So who gets to design those very few portion of opera houses, etc. And even in smaller projects, there's only so many houses, extensions, schools, government projects or even new developments out there, but so many architects. So who gets to do that work? I think there was a statistic last week that it's about 4% of construction work in residential in Perth is done by architects. The rest is done by project home developers. So that's a tiny little chunk that we're all fighting for. Interesting. So I like to spread it into these two chunks, and this is my personal opinion. Other people would have different versions of what this might be. But I think there are two realms that you can sit in as an architect. You're either the artist, so you're designing for yourself, you're a purist, what you design is what you design, and that's it. If clients come to you, so be it, you'll design them something that you like and it's all about you. Or, on the other side, you're a designer. It's about pleasing the client, it's about solving the problem, it's about whatever they come to you with, you'll fix that, and you're not restricted to one particular design. So there's two camps you can sit in. And so this is a sort of diagram graph that I've put together weighing those two things against who's making money. So you can decide to sit in the artist camp and you'll probably make some money because clients will come to you. Maybe over time you develop a bit of a palette and they can see your work and they go, I like that, I want one of those myself, cool. Or you're the designer who goes, you've got problems, I'm going to help you solve it, I'm going to figure it out. You're a bit entrepreneurial and you make things happen and you make some money. Where I think you don't make money is if you fall into the middle. And this is what I call like the big ravine or the chasm of architecture. So as soon as you start saying, I have my own ideas about how things work, but I want to solve your problems at the same time and bring the two things together, is when you start to get conflicted, things don't work, and the clients will go somewhere else because they'll go someone who's extreme, always. They'll pick the extreme person. The architect who's 100% a designer will get more money than that person who's sort of non-committed, doesn't really know where they are. So the reason why I bring this up is because if you don't choose now, as in third, fourth and fifth year, which camp you want to be in, someone will choose for you, and that's just the way it is. So if I give you some examples of who's sitting in these camps so you've got a better idea, over on the artist side, far left, you've got Peter Zumthor, Mies van der Rohe, who designed the Farnsworth house and said, I don't care if people can see you while you're getting changed, this is the house I'm making for you. Calatrava, who comes in and says that this is what the museum's going to look like, it's going to be a big beautiful dove, and I'm going to make it the way I make it, and if it doesn't look like that at the end and costs an extra $2 billion and runs 8 years late, you're going to have to suffer that, and that's just happened at the moment in New York. Zaha Hadid, rest in peace, comes a little bit closer to that sort of area because she goes and finds clients and then I guess resolves it, but there's a consistency in her work and you know every time you see it that it's Zaha. So she's sort of sitting in that camp. Then you've got guys like ARM who did Perth Arena. They've got a style and they've got a way of working, and you can see that, but you can tell that they're going out looking for projects, and they'll morph themselves. So if you look across their projects, you'll see that some are different from others, but in general there's a consistent theme. So they're still sort of sitting in that artist camp. On the other side, you've got on the far right guys like Bjarke Ingels. Yes is more. Whatever you got, I'm going to do it for you. You got a problem, I'll make it. I have this building and it looks like this. This client didn't want it. Do you want it? That's just how it works at that level. Foster and Partners. The biggest firms in the world, these sort of architecture machines, these huge $10 billion revenue a year companies that have 2,000 employees, they all sit in that camp. And that's mostly because they've got to feed that engine and keep it all churning. So they have to, by definition, just say, what do you need? Come on, we'll design it for you. School, hospital, library, whatever you need. Please, please keep feeding the beast. And they all sort of sit in that camp. So I guess for you it's important just to think about over the next couple of years and reflect where you want to be. We probably spend most of our time as educators trying to push you in this direction, just to get you to think, to design, and to form your own understanding of what you want to be. Employers, and I speak from experience, will push you this way. 100% of the time, every single time. They need you to do a door schedule, go and do a door schedule. They need you to design toilets, go and design the toilets. And that's because they need to make money out of you, plain and simple. At the end of the day, you are a revenue creating device if you go and work for one of those big companies. So just keep in the back of your mind where you want to sit, and if you really want to sit somewhere, sit there and be good at it. If you really want to sit on the other side, sit there and be good at that too. There's no right or wrong. Okay, coming back to the relevance of this discussion. So where is the common ground for these two sides then? Where do they meet? Where do they come together? And where does the work go to? Who decides that the designer gets the job, or who decides the artist gets the job? Where do you differentiate themselves? And more importantly, as a recent graduate, where do you start? How do you put yourself in that camp and say, this is me, this is who I want to be, and I want some work? The architecture competition. This is where it all comes together. This is where it is a level playing field. There's no rights and wrongs. There's hundreds of people submitting for the same contract, and you put together what you want to put together. There's a panel of jurors. There usually be two of the client, maybe a couple who are from that city who are interested in how it sort of works in the development, and then a few other architects or people that have an interest in how it's going together, and they will judge every single piece of work that goes in there equally, and it'll all go forward. Level playing field, it's in the architecture competition. People are made and broken in the architecture competition. Zaha started architecture competition. These big people, where do they all start? By winning an architecture competition. And you see some amazing, amazing projects that were designed by architecture students. Has anyone been to the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington, DC? Just raise your hands. Nobody. Okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful project. It was the very first war memorial that wasn't an obelisk with some names down the bottom. What she did was she carved a patch of earth out of the ground and then put a wall along the edge and then wrote the names onto there, which is very common. We know these walls with names along the edges now because this design has come along. But as you walk along the walls, you slowly raise it higher and higher and higher, and you fall down into where all these people were that have passed away, and it's very reflective. And then you sort of walk back out on the other side again, and it connects you up to the Washington Tower, Washington Monument. So there's this symbolism and all these things that are going on. Third year architecture student. Third year architecture student. She beat all the big firms, she beat everyone. She got the commission, she got the money. Boom. Started her architecture practice after that. So you guys can do it. So again, why do I bring this up? Because there is a standard in architecture competitions, which is the A1 competition panel. Every competition, even the ones held right now, have an A1 competition panel component. They expect you to do it, and that's because it's a standard across the board. Makes it level playing field for everyone if everyone has to do the same thing. So it'll be one panel, two panels, three panels, four, whatever it is, and potentially something else these days. They might ask for like a fly-through or a video or, I don't know, a podcast, whatever it is. They'll ask for something, but it always comes back to that A1 competition panel, which is why we in architecture school get you guys to do A1s, because we're trying to get you used to that. But no one told me that, so I just got pissed off every time someone asked me to do an A1. That is why we're getting you to do it. plain and simple. So what I want to do today is to talk about what makes a good A1 competition panel layout, so that you guys can take these tips over the next week, put together some A1s to show for next week's pinup, or use them for the final presentation, whatever that might be for you. So plain and simple, I'm just going to cut through it and make this easy for you guys. So, keys to a good competition panel. Number one, there should be evidence of narrative. So people like to hear a story. They like when someone tells them a story, they like to hear a metaphor and an analogy. If you can somehow bring that out through your architectural composition, through the panel, so it allows us to read from start to finish and we have an understanding of the project by doing that through some sort of narrative or connection, it makes it really good and you're really sold on it. Second thing, clarity of concept throughout the entire panel series. So you shouldn't feel like there's 2, 3, 4, 5 different concepts going on all these different panels. It should be on panel 1 and panel 2, I get it, there's this consistent theme going on. There's one overarching concept and I really like it, or I don't like it, whatever it is. There should be a set of hierarchies in scale. And what I mean by that is, and you'll see in the examples next, there should be a big shot that sort of pulls everyone in, or whatever it is, the emotional grabber, the big section, the big diagram, the big money shot, perspective, whatever it is. Then you should come down in scale, something maybe it relates to the site, like a long section or a big site plan or something that informs us about everything, and then you break it down smaller again. Maybe it's the smaller perspectives or the smaller diagrams or the drawings, whatever that might be. So there's a hierarchies of scale throughout the sheet. You'll find that in sheets that everything is sort of similar, you start to get lost in it. It becomes a jungle and it's difficult to read, difficult to navigate, and difficult to understand the concept, and you'll move on pretty quickly. If you've got 200 competition panels to look through, you're going to chuck those ones out pretty quick. Avoid big text chunks. See sometimes these panels, people justify a text chunk and turn it into a big square and think it looks like the other big squares next to the things. Unnecessary. No one's going to read more than 50 words on a panel. If you need to have more words than that, they'll likely ask you to submit an A4 sheet or document that explains the story, and that's fine, you can submit that separately. If you're putting little bits of text underneath some diagrams to explain what the concept is or what it is you're exploring, keep it to an absolute minimum, like you're thinking half a sentence type things, just explicit. Even if you need to cut words out and it doesn't make sense with syntax, doesn't matter, just make it short and sweet. Site sympathy. This is a huge one, especially when we're dealing with international context. They want to know that this architect from Australia, this third-year student who's put together some panels for, let's call it, an opera house in Tokyo. They want to know that this student from Australia has an equal understanding of the person who is from Tokyo who's putting together that museum. Because if they don't, they're just going to choose that person from Tokyo every time because they have a better understanding and they're going to make a better building. It's just the way it works. So graphically, you need to be demonstrating that you understand the context and you understand the site. Really important. Next one, no fat. So keep it to the key points only. If you feel like a drawing was asked for but isn't necessary and doesn't show anything extra to your concept, it doesn't build on the overall narrative, get rid of it. Unimportant. More important to have beautiful white space and resonance and hierarchy than to just put all the drawings in just because they were asked for, unless they've said, and you have to have said key section from certain vantage point. Obviously, then you put it in. Finally, restrained colour palette. You'll see as we're going through the competition panels next that every architect will, whatever it is, they're trying to carry on a mood, but there'll be a restrained colour palette, so we're not using more than 2 or 3 colours throughout. So turn the saturation down and pick 1 or 2 colours that sort of carries on throughout. So you might have diagrams and where you're indicating what to look at. They might be, for example, let's say they're all orange. And then that orange might carry through to the plan and section elevation where you're indicating certain key points, and then it might flow through the perspective. So there's a continuity, consistency that's going through. And finally, very important, probably the most important, is the emotional grabber. What's the big thing that puts everyone across the line and says that this is it, this is the guy, this is the girl, this is the architect who I want to choose for my project. I'm going to spend $2 billion on this person. So you want them to say, I can feel myself inside this building, or I can feel myself standing on the hill looking at that vantage point. They need to feel that. They need to be there. And just remember, people buy emotion. And at the end of the day, they're buying your service. You're selling a product and they're buying it if you're a business person. So Simon Sinek says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So they buy the emotion behind it, not what the actual product is. So the sensation, the atmosphere, we use all these ephemeral words all the time, and in third year it just sounds like unnecessary, irreverent jargon, but it's not. It's really important. That's what they buy. That's all they care about. And okay, so most competitions are run online, which is awesome. So you'll find that they have, if you're on ArcDaily or anything like that, they'll post up when a competition is launched, and that competition will usually have an online website, which is good because then not only are they submitted there, but they're also stored there. So you can go back later and see what the competition panels were, who won, who did well, who got highly commended, all that sort of stuff. A good website for you guys if you don't know it, and that's where I've got all of today's images from, just to keep it consistent, is from Urukia, which is urukia.com. So what they do is they announce competitions when they come out from all over the planet. Every single competition that comes out, architecture competition, they put it on there, and then when it finishes, they say these were the people that won and these were the people that did well. So there's a giant archive of competition panels from across the planet, and what that means is you can spend one afternoon looking at all the different winners from all the different competitions around the world, and you start to see the consistencies of what is important, what wins competitions, what makes the money at the end of the day, how to win the client, which is what it's all about. So I encourage you, every time you're feeling like you need to put together a presentation panel, check out what is common and what is winning right now, because it will change every year. The stuff that is working really well will change by next year. You notice certain countries deal with certain graphics differently, so make sure you check out what is winning. Okay, let's get into some competition. So I'll try not to talk too much over the panels because I guess they're self-explanatory and there's a lot of information there. But you can see some of the rules that I was talking about, things like hierarchies, reduced colour palette consistency, there's sort of the pink that's going through there. Overall money shot image, panels at the top, keeping the information at the minimum. That's too much text in my opinion, etc. More competition panels, all about the images. This one, so now starting to use, I think this is extremely common, especially amongst the winners, is that instead of just trying to put architectural drawings in their own space, use the actual image itself as white space. So if you have a lot of foreground and green grass, let's say for example if you're doing a project on an oval in Rolling Stone and there's a lot of green grass, you might start to layer over some drawings over that green grass. Or if there's a lot of blue sky in Rolling Stone, you might start to layer some drawings over the top of that. So instead of putting big white splotches everywhere and then chucking in some black and white drawings that don't resonate with everything else, start to use those other areas as white space. Core money shots, keeping that sort of ephemerality in your shots. So I notice that a lot of students, when they're building their final render, they'll make it look a little bit probably too photoreal. Lines are too sharp and it just seems a little bit detached. So what I like to encourage them to do is pretend it's a photo on a camera and change the aperture. So play with blur, play with focal points of what's important and what goes dark in the background. If you want to, this is a technique I've seen some students do. They put their photo render into Instagram and then put all the filters and things on there that come out and play with all the textures and then output it and show me. Whatever your technique is, whatever works for you, that's perfectly fine. But just add that extra layer to make it go on the other side of photoreal, because photoreal never works unless you're Hassel or Herzog and Mewburn and you've got 1,000 people working for you and amazing V-Ray engines, all that sort of stuff. Subtlety. Actually, this panel is probably not so successful in terms of the layout. There's probably a little bit too much text. The reason I put it in is because there's a huge amount of complexity in this project that is captured in one panel. So this is a prison in the middle of the ocean, which is being designed at the moment. This is a competition winner. And they go through understanding of how the entire prison works, everything, all in this one panel. And I thought it was interesting. So if they can get the complexity of a prison in the middle of the ocean on one panel, I'm pretty sure you guys can get a cricket club and Rolling Stone happening, right? Another one of the prisons. A little bit dark. This was second place. Yeah. Yeah, and careful when I talk about emotion before, make sure you pick the right emotion. Because, I don't think the prison people want that. It's a little bit heavy. Yeah. Another one. So they made this amazing waterfall, which everyone knows the yard, in the prison yard. Go out and play basketball, do your weights, trade cheeseburgers and cigarettes, etc. And then they've built this waterfall of the ocean around it. I don't know what happens when it gets stormy and the waves are that high, but still interesting concept. Again, so these guys have done it, right, I know. But they're definitely carrying an emotion and a heaviness and a weight to the drawings, right? It's stepping beyond basic architecture, and now it looks like something out of a narrative or a storybook, something Sean Tan would paint in a picture. So I definitely encourage you. These plans, they've made them white and put them over the top and started to colour code it, but they look like actual artworks instead of just your plain old black and white drawings. And if you had a look at the images, I'll upload this to Google Drive so everyone can have a look. Some of the spatial qualities in there are quite beautiful.
Why do you need a prison in the ocean?
Running out of room, and it's probably easier than putting it on the land. Correct, yeah, it will be. This one is the one that's going to be built. Yeah. It's all on that Eureka site if you want more information. Okay, another one. Nice bridge. This kept it very subtle, so I think a good habit to get into is if the section is really important, let it fall down to the bottom of the page and ground the sheet. It's always about grounding the sheet together. If you have white space on all edges, sometimes it can feel clunky in that there's no real start or finish to it. So we talked about that narrative. So there's a flow through here. Site understanding and how it's all coming together. That big money shot that pulls us in. More spatial understandings of what happened and a plan, and then finish it all off with the site section so we can understand the concept and the context and relationships. Yeah. Nice diagrams. Nice shot. Good site. Probably too much information. And this one was the winner, I think. So it's all about that shot. There's not a whole lot of architecture in this shot, but it takes up most of the panel, and it gets you. So yeah. And again, so now the architecture is forming part of the drawing. So all the drawings are in that space. So they're using the architecture itself as the white space for the drawings to go over the top. Yeah. Vertical car park. Interesting. Lots of stuff going on, lots of complexity. Some cool diagrams of how it all works. And that's the winner as well. Yeah. Now who can tell me why this one is terrible and did not win? Too much colour, just shout it out. Too much colour, too much text, bad font. What else?
Gas masks.
Gas masks. Different fonts all over the place. What else? Too busy. Too busy. There's just too much crap, right? Yeah. So that's a good example of what not to do. So if you feel like you're shoving everything on the sheet, maybe get the gas masks out. Now this is very, very tempting as an architecture student to do. It's make this beautiful minimalist piece that gets rid of everything and says, this is it, this is my building. And I fell into that wrongly in my thesis and was corrected before I finished, luckily. It just doesn't show enough information. You might put that up as the panel at the awards night, at the architecture awards, once you've already shown everything, but you would have a sub-booklet that goes next to that and people can flick through and actually see how it all works. You'd never just put that up by itself. So don't feel trapped into doing something like that. I know it's beautiful and I know it carries a lot of weight spatially, but it just doesn't tell us enough, and it did not win, I can tell you that. Now we're in Australia, some sea container houses in Sydney. There's a different quality to Australian competition panels. I don't know what it is, but you can always tell where they are. So again, using the sky space as white space, bring the drawings over the top, consistency of colours. You can see the relationship of these yellows and starting to come back in through the grass and the sunlight. They've put a yellow blur over that in Photoshop, you can tell, but it adds a certain warmth and a certain quality to the space. And that's an emotion grabber. I mean, the whole project is in that one shot, and then we can see how it all comes together through some axonometric diagrams down the bottom. Great project. Another one, another Australian one again. Lots of use of the blur and shadow and sort of ephemeral lighting, really soft, more like an artwork than anything else. You can see everything's quite brushed and beautiful, really nice. So if you're talking luxury and poetics and all that sort of stuff, yep. Again, soft, ephemeral, probably a little bit disjointed. I'd say they might have brought this diagram series here down to the bottom and let that cement the top so that it doesn't feel open-ended. It feels like the finish is in the middle, which is a bit awkward. So yeah, if I were them, I'd probably move these two upwards, move those down, but I'm not them. That's fine. These guys I found interesting. They split up their project into these tiles. So they had an A1 and then they had to create these little information tiles underneath, which was kind of nice. And we used to do that for 5th year here at Curtin. But I just sort of thought the balance between these two, they have all this information, and it's particularly important information. This is about a site that was bombed recently and how they're dealing with all of the complexities and understanding of a recently terrorised site. So obviously there's a lot of information that has to be there, but then balancing that with the subtlety and the composition of the building against that, I thought was kind of nice. So thinking about that balance and composition in your own panels as well. Again, same one again, just dealing with that information and then how it all works and comes together. Money Shot sort of does it all every time. These guys had to do 4 A1 panels for their competition. I start to feel when you get to 4, there might be a little bit too much information to read into quickly, and it loses a little bit, but you can definitely tell that there's still a hierarchy to each sheet. So if you take them each individually, there's your main shot there, other shot, getting information, site, context, and other information there, main shot, smaller shot, plans, main shot, smaller shot, diagrams, main shot, smaller shot, more information, and finishing off, so start and finish. So you can tell that they've still consistently done what they should be doing. It's just a matter of spreading across 4. And this is a good example of exactly that as well. So they sort of capped off the top by using the sky there, no white space, and then capped off the bottom on the final sheet. So you get a start, information, 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 end point, right? So there's a hierarchy of what's going on. And some beautiful imagery as well, if you can have a look later. Really nice. Again, start, end, information in between. And a really nice sectional perspective there as well. This is a museum in Japan, and you'll notice graphically the shift from where we were in Australia, and we're now over into these line drawings and white space. Common in Japan as well, just as a graphic thing people are doing. So you'll notice different geographic locations, different graphic understanding, so always checking back up on what is common and what is applauded today. This is one, I think it's at Everest Base Camp or something like that. This is the winning project, this is the one that's going to be built, and they've just gone 100% emotion and then slowly bring in that information in over the top. So kind of interesting how they layered that. No white space on these sheets, you'll notice there's not a single bit. They're using sky and ground in each case to do that. Russian Red Square, dealing with the new museum entrance through the corner there, up here. That's the new partition, so it's about connection back to that site. So what I was speaking about before, the importance of the site sympathy, shows that we have an understanding of the overall picture. This shows understanding of spatial composition, how it's all coming together, how it feels, connection back to the site again, and then how your artworks are going to fit in there. So we've designed a building, but we're also aware of the function. It's about artworks, it's about fitting them in. We get it, we can build your project if you vote for us. Back to A1 single panels. This is the winning project for Venice Biennale Information Tower. Milan Expo Information Tower. All about that central shot, a little bit of information. You can see a huge balance between the two there. It's about the white here versus the image at the top. Just some nice ephemeral renders. Probably too much information on these sheets below. Same again. I tend to discourage people from doing big drawings like this that lack information. So you end up with these big boxes that are just lines in axonometry, and it sort of fades away because it makes things that aren't important to the eye. And at the end of the day, that's how people are judging you. It's through that visual communication. So I probably wouldn't do too much. Probably start blurring things out and then bringing these to the foreground, as we were talking about before. This is the wine bar in Paris. Beautiful, beautiful project. That's third place. Second place. Overlooking the bridge, site context, how it feels. And then the winner, deserved winner, absolutely beautiful. If you guys can check this project out. Yeah, wonderful. That AXO, so they knew that how this project goes together is what is important about the project, so they made the AXO bigger than every other drawing, and which is what you need to consider when you're putting together your hierarchy as well. What's the concept, and therefore what drawings need to be bigger than other drawings in order to demonstrate that. Okay, so I just wanted to finish off by showing you that you are 100% not different from the big guys. So recently we had an architecture competition in Melbourne for the Flinders Street station, if you guys saw it. And Hassel, the biggest firm in Australia, worked together with Herzog & Buren, one of the biggest firms in Europe. So it was a super competition. Everyone, dream comp, they came together. Zaha also submitted for this. And with their panels, they were expected to do a film. So just wanted to show you this because this is not so far beyond what you guys can do within your talents already. You already have the skill of what is in here. Now it's just a matter of putting it on page. You can do it. It's not that mysterious. It is what it is. so not divorced from where you are right now. I mean, I could expect any of you guys to put something like that together now. That was, I don't know, $2 billion, $4 billion project, and any of you guys could do that right now. So what I'm trying to say is you all have the skills. It's just a matter of now putting it together and putting together those panels so that you can move forward. Cool? All right, thank you.